Well, welcome back. My name is Kathleen Kendall-Tackett, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Proclaris Press. And I have still today with me Dr. Diane Sanford, who is the author of Stress Less, Live Better, which is published by Proclaris. And it's a book about incorporating mindfulness techniques into your everyday life. And a recent article that just came out in Time magazine was talking about what they called the goddess myth. And that was actually referring to this idea that somehow we sort of have to be perfect as mothers, and we tend to be very sort of critical of ourselves and critical of each other. And so Dr. Sanford is actually going to address that briefly today. It is something that is, of course, very, very common, unfortunately, and it's nice to know that there's some ways to cope with that. So Diane, tell us, what exactly is the goddess myth?
So the goddess myth is this idea that there's a single right way that women should prepare for birth, have their children naturally, be breastfeeding exclusively, never get an epidural. And what we know is that the best laid plans often take a detour for one reason or another. And the shaming that a woman feels herself and experiences from others is tremendous in our culture right now. So even those women who are doing many things right, it's the one little exception or the thing that maybe came up or the way in which her birth changed. And this whole idea, again, that there is a single right way, when really the best way is what's in the best interest of you and your child at any given point in time.
Right. And I think actually that's a really important thing. But as I was listening to you, I mean, one thing that actually kind of did occur to me is I feel like that there's two things here. One is what's going on with the women, and their choices and the shaming and all that stuff, and kind of, not owning that part. But I also look at it from a systemic standpoint, because I really feel like in many ways the system is very much against, women be able to kind of like do the things that they want to do. It's like the lack of support for breastfeeding and the very high interventionist culture we have in our birth. And so it's kind of like, I think women are taking responsibilities for stuff that are not really their responsibility.
So that's a great way of saying it. And what mindfulness can do then is it can help women take control of what they can and let go of what they can't with self-compassion.
Right.
So instead of beating themselves up and all this negative self-talk that goes on, they can let go and feel like they're doing the best job. So in the book, one of the skill sets is self-compassion always. There are a number of exercises, questions for reflection. And if you do that for a couple of weeks, it can really help you not only not judge yourself, but become less judging of others. Because the truth is that the more judgmental we are of ourselves, the more we pass that on or share the love, as I like to say. And, again, Kathy, what you were saying about how our culture sends women these messages over which they have no control. So mindfulness is really a way of taking back and reclaiming your life and your choices.
Because I think a lot of times women find themselves in a situation where, especially things like looking at birth or even looking at what happens to them postpartum, just sort of spirals out of control.
It totally spirals out of control. And again, what we see is they're experiencing a biological shift. They're placing all this pressure on themselves, and society is placing all this pressure
Absolutely.
on them. And that's a recipe for disaster.
It is. It is. So at least, from the women's perspective, they can take back one part of this. They can't control what's happening necessarily, but they can control how they react to it.
They can control how they react to it. And if they have a choice, they can make the choice that is in the best interest of them and their baby or their family or whoever they're in relationship with, as well as do what they can. The Dalai Lama says, if there's something you can do, do it. If there's nothing you can do, worrying or shaming yourself about it will only make you feel worse.
And I think actually, I think that that's such an important point. So, what might that look like for, say, a new mother?
So, so
how might this look in terms of, her
so,
self compassion?
sure. So the easiest way I can say it is what I do in clinical practice, right?
Hmm.
Because that's what I know best. So I actually have mom write down like a list of 3 affirmations that
Okay.
they say daily. So, and we do it based on their real experience. So like I had a mom come in the other day say, I'm worried that I'm not going to do so well. So I said, well, how are you doing? And she said, well, really, she's doing pretty well, and
Mm.
that she's gotten to know her baby's cues, that in fact, when her husband is distressed now, she's the one who, steps up. So we wrote down, I am strong, I am capable, I
Hmm.
can do this.
Hmm.
And those are words of encouragement, kindness, love towards yourself. It's a great way to get started.
Yeah, that sounds great. So then how would that translate into being compassionate to other people?
Well, again, the more you're compassionate towards
Mm.
yourself, the more ease you have. Because a lot of lack of self compassion or judgment occurs because we're feeling insecure.
Yeah.
We don't think we're doing a good enough job. And so we're more reactive. We're not responding with choice, we're reacting on autopilot.
Right.
And so we tend to judge others. When we learn not to judge ourselves and to be accepting of ourselves as a whole person, we can do it a lot easier with someone else.
And I think also too, kind of recognizing that there's larger forces at play here,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that women oftentimes get caught in that, and it's not necessarily really even their choice of that where they ended up, but that we can be kind to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because listen, birth is unpredictable.
It is.
You never know what's going to happen as much as we plan for all the contingencies. And so we have to be kind to ourselves and kind to each
Mm.
other about how our experience has been, which what you're saying is so important, a lot of which is outside of our control.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's some great food for thought, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that because, as I said, I think that this is an issue, and this is an issue that doesn't just affect pregnant and postpartum. It's kind of
No,
right throughout life. There's so many different choices. Are we going to work? Or are we not going to work outside the home? Are we going to, you know, are we going to take hormone replacement therapy or not as we hit midlife? Are we
yeah, yeah,
these kind of
that's it
choices?
exactly. Yes,
So I
yes.
think that this is a skill that I think is going to actually impact women throughout their lives. So I think that that's a great thing to know.
It's a tremendously important skill, and the younger you are when you learn it, the easier it gets as you go along.
I think that that sounds great. Well, thank you so much. So Dr. Diane Sanford's book is called Stress Less, Live Better. It's available at preclarispress.com. And tune in next time for another interview on the effects and the health benefits of mindfulness. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathy.